When Dayz Standalone first came out in 2013, it sold over 1 million copies within 4 weeks. The game was based on the mod for ArmA 2, which had cultivated a truly colossal following, and almost every single one of those players was on board the hype train for Dayz Standalone, but now Dayz is a ghost town. The mod's player base dwindles by the day, and well, Dayz Standalone isn't faring much better. Welcome to the day Dayz died. If you want to see some evidence that Dayz did in fact die, you need only look at the popularity of the term Dayz in the Google search engine. As you can see, at the end of 2013, there was a huge interest in the game, but over time, that interest has degraded away until right now, the interest in the game Dayz is 4% of what it was at launch. Now, in order to understand why Dayz Standalone failed, we need to first understand why the ArmA 2 mod was so great. And let's be real, let's put aside our nostalgia for a brief moment and acknowledge the truth we all know too well. ArmA 2 Dayz, in many ways, was a shit game. The graphics were terrible, the server restarts always happened at the worst moments, desync, lag and glitches were rife, even the beefiest PC could never manage more than 20 FPS while speeding through Cherno. But despite all of that clunkiness, all that ugliness, there was something beautiful about Dayz. And beauty is rarely formed around one singular thing, but rather dozens. However, there was one feature that made the mod extremely attractive to many, and it's something Standalone totally lacks. An endgame. In Standalone, the game can be summarised entirely by me saying this: you spawn in, loot up, kill other players, loot some more, then die, and then you rinse and repeat. The real reason Dayz is for many people so unenjoyable is the utter aimlessness of it. And I think Soviet Womble summarised this idea really quite beautifully in one of his videos.
Well, there's nothing to do. At this point, I'd expect, we'd be gearing up, we'd be heading over to a base that we've set up to store our equipment and gold or whatever we've stolen, and then we'd be heading off to do one of the NPC missions or some patrol or something like that that spawn randomly. There's nothing to do. Right now, you're making potatoes grow.
In Dayz Epoch, when you spawned in on a new server, right from the word go, there was a clear objective you had. Spawn in, loot up, make your way up to the trader, sell some gear, get a car, maybe do some AI events, and then start building your base with your hard-earned materials. And the beauty of the base building in ArmA 2 was that you could work on it for weeks and still never complete it. You could always add another floor, another helipad, or another garage. The bases in the Epoch were a really good way of providing something to work towards, at providing an end game. And after you've built up a decent base, you have to defend it from those pesky bandits who want to steal all your loot. Or maybe you yourself want to be one of those pesky bandits and raid other people's bases. All of that infrastructure, the base building, the AI events, the safe zones in cities where you could talk to other people without fear of dying, all of those mechanics made possible a seemingly limitless amount of stories. But when we look at Standalone, relatively speaking, the mechanics, even for years after release, feel bare bones in terms of their abilities to allow the player to create their own stories. In Standalone, 95% of the entertaining things that can happen are either a firefight, a fistfight, or a humorous encounter with another player when you spawn in. But with what seems like everyone KOSing these days, such player interactions are becoming harder and harder to get. To give credit where credit is due, Dayz Standalone is not a terrible game. Sometimes it can be genuinely fun. For example, last night when I was doing some research for this video, and I ended up chasing a guy who had a gun, his aim was truly awful. He must have fired off 20 rounds over the course of the half-hour-long chase, which did get quite tiring after the first 5 minutes, but it ended up in quite an unexpected way. He tried to swap his guns, but accidentally dropped his gun instead. I picked it up and ended up killing him with his own gun. At the end of it all, just before he died, he cried out this wonderful line.
Why am I so bad at this game, dude?
To give the game credit, it can be a fun time. But throughout the 3-hour play session, it only reinforced my belief in the whole endgame argument, because when I was running around, it was aimless. I had no specific objective other than to loot up and kill other people. Now again, for some people, that nomadic playstyle is a fun one, but for most of the members of the old DayZ community, it isn't. Now, while doing research for this video, I came across a screenshot on the DayZ website. The DayZ devs have announced that they are finally working on base building, and this concept art is what it should look like when it's released. Now, when I initially heard this news and saw this screenshot, I genuinely got excited. For a moment I thought, yes, the game is finally going to have that end game. It may have taken them 4 years, but finally it's just around the corner. Except then my heart dropped as I realised the most ugly truth. Take a look at this image. A really long, hard look. Does anything look familiar to you? Well, for those of you who never played ArmA 2, it would be unfair to expect you to notice, but for those of you who are ArmA 2 veterans, the ones who have been around since before 2012, does this look familiar to you? Well, it did to me, so I hopped back into ArmA 2, and well, I did some tinkering. Now, I'm not going to say it's perfect, because it isn't, but I like to think that this base is a pretty accurate recreation of the hypothetical base building system they have planned. Now, there are a few things ArmA 2 doesn't have that are in this concept art, like a generator that links to a lamp, but at the end of the day, I think this base I made is a better one than the concept art I just showed you. I added a wooden ramp that you can stand out and defend the base from, as well as a whole bunch of other decorative things like a rubbish bin, a toilet, benches, a campfire, a table with chairs, signs, sandbags, boxes, and barbed wire. This entire base was created in vanilla ArmA 2. That's right, this hypothetical base building system that isn't even in the game yet is going to be inferior to what ArmA 2 Operation Arrowhead had at launch. That's before the concept of the DayZ mod even existed. And the community who've been loyal up to this point, they deserve a better base building system than this. Now, I think this base alone is a really good demonstration of how vanilla ArmA 2 is better than DayZ in this respect, but I wanted to go the extra mile. See, when I created this base, I was genuinely surprised at the vast amount of items I had the ability to spawn in with the editor. So I did what any sane man would do, and I spent 2 hours spawning in every item on the menu that you could use to build bases. And here is what that looked like. Now, what you need to bear in mind is every item in this field is unique. Every single item is different from the last and could be used in some way to build a base. There are 30 different types of ammo boxes and tents, barbed wire and dozens of varieties of sandbags. There are camo nets, stationary MGs, cargo containers, scout huts, you name it. And one other thing you need to bear in mind is I cut out roughly 200 items that were either too similar to other items or they couldn't reasonably be used as part of a base building system. All of this was recorded in vanilla ArmA 2. No mods, no add-ons whatsoever. Now compare this to the concept art of the system they plan to implement, and it starts to get depressingly obvious that this base building system is really not very impressive. Now, everyone who played ArmA 2 DayZ has their own stories. Everyone has their own favourite memory they love to retell and reminisce about, and in order for me to make my next point, I want to tell you one of those stories. Instead of me telling you why ArmA 2 was so great, I want to give an example, and instead use that example to show you why it was so great. Now, there are dozens of stories that would prove my next point that I would love nothing more than to tell you, but ultimately, I think I only need to tell you one. It is a totally true tale from one session of DayZ I had that, without any hesitation, I can say was the best evening of gaming I have ever had. I think in a way this story explains beautifully why ArmA 2 DayZ was just so fun, and Dayz Standalone failed to capture it. So if you want to watch this battle unfold as it happened, there will be a link to the original video down in the description. So to set up this story, me and my 2 other clanmates were playing Epoch Panthera. Now all that sounds well and good, except there was a problem. See, there were a particularly nefarious bunch of bandits, held up in a base near the trader city, and all they would do all day long was abuse game mechanics and generally be the worst group of Dayz players, with the exception of hackers, you could ever hope to imagine. Now, me and my mates, we weren't saints. We killed pretty much everyone except for fresh spawns on sight, but these guys had stooped to a level of true douchebaggery. They would drive their cars around the safe zone to try and glitch bounce other players out of it to kill them when they had all their best gear on them, so they could steal all of their loot. They set up their base with a clear view of the trader city, and at all times there would be one of them on the roof with a sniper rifle, picking off anyone and everyone, whether they be leaving the trader city, spawning in fresh, or doing AI objectives. Now, it goes without saying that these guys were pricks, but that's when me and my clanmates, we hatched a plan. See, we had had enough of being sniped at all day every day, so decided to take the battle to their front door. So it started as per usual. One of them had an M107 sniper on the roof and was wriggling around trying to spot any innocent little Bambis to blow to bits, you know, typical bandit stuff. So I found a rock to hide behind, ranged him out, and just like that, with a snap of my gun, I nailed him first try at 600 meters. Now that alone would have been quite satisfying, but you see, I was only getting started. Earlier in the day we had secured a Huey, and that's when I hatched a plan. Why don't we fly over to their roof and nab their precious M107 so they can't use it to snipe any more Bambis? So we did just that. My friend Ryder was flying the chopper. I was in the passenger seat, ready to jump out, except just before we touched down, a member of the douchebag clan on the ground lit up our chopper with a volley of machine gun fire. I had just enough time to jump off, but Ryder had to get the hell out of there, leaving just me alone on top of the enemy base. And just like that, our raiding party was down to 1. So I sat there thinking over my plans. I thought first I would grab the M107, and then I would give that cheeky bandit a taste of his own medicine, when all of a sudden another member of the douchebag clan came charging out onto the roof, totally unaware of the fact I was laying down 3 feet away from him. With a burst of adrenaline, I sprayed my DMR in his general direction. Despite my panicked aim, he didn't stand a chance. Now, I was just poking my nose around their base, testing their locks, when all of a sudden I made a most fantastic discovery.
I'm in. I can't see it. Oh my god, guys, their safe's unlocked.
It's in it. Risky luck, yo.
Needless to say, I was a very happy bandit. Now, here was the problem. They had a whole wealth of sniper rifles and LMGs, even a briefcase filled with money. Now that was all well and good, but how was I supposed to get it out of there? My rucksack could only hold 4 guns and my heli evac would almost certainly get shot down. But you see, luck was on my side.
Sorry, it's over there, cool.
Oh shit, someone's opened the door.
Shoot their face. Grab the MK48, Ruskie. I am ready. Oh, I'm taking shots. Are you shooting or not? You got an SUV approaching the base. SUV approaching the base.
I couldn't believe it. One of the douchebag clan members had unlocked the front door leading into the courtyard. I knew at the time it was a rare day when a man gets this lucky this many times in a row, but my luck at this point hadn't even started. So my boy Trolley Bear, and hearing my screams of pleasure at seeing this unlocked safe, immediately bought a big ass truck and speeded his way down towards me. And after a few minutes of waiting, he arrived and started shifting the gear to the truck, when all of a sudden, disaster struck. My boy Trolley got sniped before he could even shift any of the gear. And then a minute later, my only other clanmate got sniped by the very same guy. So for the next 10 minutes, I stood there, guarding the door. Couldn't be simpler, right? Someone rushed up to try and steal the truck, I killed him. My boy Trolley came back, the bandit sniper killed him too. Another clan member came back, I killed him with ease. Now remember when I said watching the door couldn't be simpler? Well, after hearing a clicking noise to my left, this defense was going to get a hell of a lot harder.
There we go.
Okay.
They're unlocking the gate. The other gate, there's 2 gates, they're unlocking the other. Fuck. That's not good.
2 gates.
Oh shit, clever girl.
You can shoot through the wood, you do remember.
So I fell back behind the SUV, my angles severely limited. Now things were getting truly desperate, when all of a sudden, another bandit came cheeky peeky like sneaking in through the front door.
Shit.
Zombies on the server, leave me alone.
Ah, get fucked. Got another one.
Now, I really had gotten quite lucky, but I knew that my luck was going to run out sooner or later, so my DayZ instincts kicked in, because when you have the opportunity, always go for the flank.
Ah! What the fuck, where are they shooting from?
I don't know.
Can't get any gear back.
Hey, bitch.
And after outplaying the bandit sniper and avenging my friends, I hightailed my ass out of there, a rucksack full of guns. But I wasn't running away. Oh no, I was going for the long flank. And I definitely didn't really badly need the toilet. So by the time I had logged back on, my boy Trolley had shifted nearly every bit of loot into the truck, but he was having a far less lucky day than me.
I'm dead.
Okay, how are you
Wait,
killed?
what the flip? Some random guy called Budgie. I was in the MTVR driver's seat again, about to drive off.
Oh shit, there's a Mozzie.
Oh, why was I greedy and went for the last M110? Everything's pretty much in the
I see
truck.
him.
If you can kill him and grab my gear on my body and put it in the truck, and just get out. My body should be running to the truck. Priority backpack.
I hit him. I got him. I killed Quart.
That's not the guy that killed me though. I got killed by Budgie.
Ah, I got another one. Don't know who it was. Killed Budgie.
Nice. Okay, on my body, grab my gear and then just get everything out of there. Drive the truck out.
So, with 2 more bandits dead by my hand, all I had to do was grab the keys to the truck and get the hell out of there. But that was easier said than done. I tried to be as cautious as I could, but I knew the longer I waited, the more likely it was that one of those douchebag bandits would come back and finish the job. I went around, checking in the corners, paranoid. That courtyard was a total death trap. It was filled with dozens of fresh corpses from the half-hour-long firefight. My hands were sweaty, fumbling around my keyboard trying to find the damn key to the truck. I couldn't find my friend's body, and right then and there, I was convinced the next body to join the mass grave would be mine. But then I saw the pop-up for his coyote backpack. I found the key, got in the truck, and got the hell out of there. The raid took almost 40 minutes in total. Not only did me and my mates get away with a literal truckload of high-tier loot, but we also stole almost every single sniper rifle that douchebag clan had in their base, which meant that those bandits wouldn't be sniping any fresh spawns anytime soon. We ended up investing the money we made from selling all of those sniper rifles into buying a Pavlo called Sheila, and we demoralised the douchebag clan to such a degree. 2 days later, the base was totally deserted, and nobody ever heard from that clan ever again. I wrecked that clan's ass so hard, I genuinely made them rage quit the server. Now, this all begs the question, why am I telling you this story? To show off my skills with the DMR? Okay, maybe a little bit, but the reason why I'm telling you this is because every inch of that story would have been totally impossible in DayZ standalone. If there weren't any lockable saves or doors, they would have never been able to hoard up that much loot, because a stash of guns that large in standalone is something almost entirely unheard of. If there were no Epoch-style base building system, there would have been no base to raid. If there were no trader city, we wouldn't have been able to buy the MTVR we used for the getaway, and we wouldn't have been able to sell any of the loot that we acquired. Now, I could go on forever, but it was moments like that that me and my mates played the ArmA 2 mod for. Those stories are to many players the defining thing that made the ArmA 2 mod so great in hindsight. The ability for the player to create their own stories was something that the DayZ mod was truly brilliant at, and it's something that DayZ standalone is relatively bad at, because it simply doesn't have the infrastructure to support that level of the player-driven story. And for my final point, I want to address how far this game has come. Let's compare the game it released to the game in its current state. So this footage on screen I recorded in the first week of release back in 2013. Bear in mind that was 4 years ago, and I do apologise, my rig back then was bad, so the footage is a little low resolution. So what's changed since launch? Well, the game certainly looks a lot nicer. The lighting system certainly does make the game look more beautiful. They've added more weapons and more clothing. Also, the melee combat back in the day was really quite clunky and awful. And also now we have the ability to grow crops amongst other details. Now, to say that the standalone hasn't changed at all since launch is just an unfair statement, because the game has received a lot of new features. However, when people say that the game hasn't changed at all, they are both wrong, but also correct. Despite the laundry list of new add-ons, the way the game fundamentally plays is the exact same. What we did for the first week of launch was run around, loot up, kill people, and then get killed ourselves, and then we just did the old rinse and repeat. 4 years down the line, in that respect, the game has not changed one bit. And in order to explain once and for all why the mod was so popular and why the standalone isn't, I want to tell you my personal preferences for DayZ. I personally don't like the fact that you don't spawn with a map and can't see your location on it. I thought the map system in ArmA 2 DayZ was a great system, as it made the game less confusing and made meeting up with friends a total breeze. This was a really neat little feature that the standalone totally lacks. I also think its bad guns don't spawn with their magazines. I much prefer the ability to see a gun and without fail pick it up and start firing. I don't really personally like the system in DayZ where you have to find the gun and then separately find the ammo. Now here's the thing, those are my personal preferences. There is nothing necessarily wrong about having a gun spawn without any bullets. There is nothing necessarily wrong about having no map. For some people that is the more enjoyable way of playing, but that is exactly the problem. I prefer playing DayZ with those game mechanics, but I am forced to use the ones I don't enjoy. See, some people may make the argument that in their opinion, lockable saves and base building is bad. They don't want people building over roads or camping cities with snipers on their bases and picking off fresh spawns. For them, it makes the game less enjoyable. Now that's a perfectly reasonable opinion to have, but there is one critical flaw with that argument. It's based on opinion. Yes, maybe base building might make some people enjoy the game less, but for other people, it was a core reason for why DayZ was so appealing. For many people, myself included, they loved base building, grinding for wood, cinder blocks and cement. We loved the idea that we could hide away all our ill-gotten loot in our lockable saves so that once the lock was down, it was safe as houses and nobody could ever touch that gear. One of the core reasons ArmA 2 DayZ was so great was because it catered towards a variety of playstyles. DayZ standalone caters for one. See, I know a guy who loves to be able to spawn at Northwest Airfield in ArmA 2, immediately get a sniper rifle, and within 5 minutes of spawning get into a tense gunfight. I also know people who hate that way of playing, and much prefer a slower paced game where you can only spawn on the coast and it takes an hour to get any kind of decent loot. I know people who love the idea of building massive bases in DayZ. I also know people who despise that idea and want a more nomadic experience. You know, I had a friend called Danny. We collabed once and played together a few times. I remember 2 years after I stopped playing standalone, he was still playing the game, and a lot. Every other night, I got a pop-up saying he had just started the game, and I was totally baffled because to me, I found the game really quite unenjoyable. But then I realised that was because the game fitted his playstyle. See, he was the kind of guy where he would have all the mods and maps in the world to choose from, and nearly every time he chose DayZ Vanilla. Not because he had the wrong taste in gaming, but simply because that was the version of DayZ he enjoyed the most. And that was the first hint I had that led me to this conclusion. DayZ died because the devs totally failed to understand that concept. The concept that if you picked a dozen different players from the ArmA 2 community, each one would have their own individual preference of what their ideal server would look like. Maybe 4 in 12 would love an Epoch style server where you had to grind hard to get any kind of decent base. Another 4 in 12 might love an Epoch style server, except with far cheaper building materials and a much less grindy economy. 1 in 12 might love DayZ RP, 1 in 12 might love DayZ Origins, 1 in 12 might love a chaotic, fast-paced Overwatch server, and 1 in that 12 would be just like Danny. The kind of guy that loves a nomadic, bare-bones experience. And whether the devs realise it or not, they were and still are catering for that 1 in 12. For those Dannys out there. And the moment the devs decided to do that, they alienated the overwhelming majority of the community because the average community member didn't want that kind of playstyle. And just like that, the community was a 1/12 of its original size, and for those 11 people, DayZ is nothing but a melancholy nostalgia. That 5th guy, the one who liked a faster paced Epoch server, he was me. And if, like me, you lived and breathed DayZ back in the day, but never cared for standalone, I'm willing to bet that one of those 11 people on the screen sounds an awful lot like you. That was it. That was the moment when the devs decided to cater for that 1 in 12 and turn the DayZ community into a shadow of its former self. That was the day DayZ died.